Joining us now, Yao Shujie, former Honorable Chair, Professor, and Deputy Chair with the Academic Committee of Hainan University. Also in Sanya, Hainan, Charlotte Magnet, International Investment Manager of Sanya Yazhou Bay Science and Technology City Administration Bureau. In Kuala Lumpur, last but not least, Malaysia, A. San O, Principal Advisor for the Pacific Research Center of Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Congratulations, I should say, to many of those in Hainan who have been working very hard over the years for this final moment. But Charlotte, probably you can help us more than anybody else on this panel. Exactly what does that mean? Could you provide us with details of this Hainan Special Customs operation?
It is not just for duty-free. It's the fact that the goods that now enter Hainan Free Trade Port, it represents 74% of all commodities, and they are zero tariff, so which means that there is no import tax, consumption tax, or value-added taxes. The big difference between before the special custom operation and after is that before the special custom operation, companies in Hainan could import their vehicles, their raw materials, and their equipment at a zero tariff. But these were only for the own use of those companies. Right. But now those 6,600 items that are imported into Hainan Island, they can be now sold between the companies in Hainan at a zero tariff as well. I do believe that the second very interesting policies of Hainan Free Trade Port to reach the Chinese market is the fact that companies located in Hainan can import its raw material and equipment at a zero tariff. Then if these materials are processed in Hainan and are created into a new product, and if this new product's value is 30% higher than the materials that was imported, then this final product can then be exported in China mainland at a zero tariff as well, so past the second custom line. So this creates really a way for foreign products to reach the Chinese market more conveniently and at a lower cost.
I see. But it also has to do how efficiently this will be done, isn't it?
Absolutely. I believe that the one port process that Hainan has put in place right now to process all those goods is actually really efficient. All the data are collecting and comprehensively done in one single system. So this really also makes all this process of import, export, and custom declaration much easier than before.
Yeah. Mr. Yao, what do you think are some of the major factors that we have to look very closely?
Well, first of all, you have to look at the infrastructure that have been built up over the last few decades and for the next stage of economic development. And also the second feature is the institutions. The institutions have been evolved over the last few decades or so to design to this point that you can take on the shock. And things like the free trade goods can flow into the island in large quantity, and it can be absorbed very efficiently, not only to serve the final demand of consumers, but also, as my colleague Sarah just mentioned, actually lots of materials and components can be assembled, produced into new forms of product. And as long as new form of product is, have a 30% of value added, then it can be treated as some sort of duty-free good could be sold into the rest of the country and the rest of the world. So I think it's going to create a very strong competitive advantage due to the preparation, the institutional reform, and also the infrastructure, the ports, and also the policy, the regulatory framework. All this have been created, and also the large volume of talents which have already flowed into the island.
Mr. O, coming from Southeast Asia, Malaysia to be specific, how are you observing this latest development?
Well, I think we welcome such an experiment for a free trade port on Hainan Islands. I think that is a very good idea for a number of other Southeast Asian countries, especially those also with many islands, to take note, because, well, that is one way of, in a sense, promoting free trade, further promoting free trade amidst this global, shall we say, nowadays much more protectionist tendency.
Mr. Yao, how much will this experiment mean for the inland part of the country?
Nowadays, because the openness is continue to become more and more diversified, and also the quality of openness is getting higher and higher. I think for further opening policy of China, there are some requirement for this kinds of free trade ports such as Hainan Island. In the past, we opened the gate because of commodities, because of services. Nowadays, we open the whole island. It means that we open not only just for trade, but so also for investment and also for manufacturing and services. This whole institutional reform, it means that they would create a new spot for China's the so-called institutional reform. And this institutional reform is very different from the so-called policy reform or customized reform. So I think that would take China one big step forward with this experiment.
What do you think are the biggest challenges, both for the operation and the governance part, and also for the inland? Because there are many other provinces that might be put at less competitive edge as a result of Hainan's having this special customs operation.
There are challenges within the island,
Such
and
as?
there are challenges between subjects because all the goods and services are coming. And can you actually digest? So the manufacturing capacity there still need to be, testified, to be built, to cope with this large influx of commodity and turn into high efficient final product. And secondly, as I say, although Hainan Island has attracted a lot of talents, but I think there are still a lack of talents for different special areas. For example, like international law, like international logistics, and also people who know the international trade policies. There are still a gap there. And certainly, I think China, within the Hainan Islands, there are some ports which are very operational, very efficient. There are some other ports that are newly open. So they need to cope with these kinds of changes, how they can learn quickly to handle with these goods and services. And the so-called first tier and second tier, ports, they are under design and there are some in operation, but they are not in full operation yet. And they may encounter, for example, like the second port, physical trade. How can you get this data? How can you get these goods and services to be delivered and also forward and backward in a very efficient way so that the cost can be reduced to the level that we design. And between the island and the mainland, I think certainly, for example, like Guangdong used to be very open, and Guangdong have to prepare how can they become even more open in the future because Hainan Island has so many special policies. So how about Shenzhen and Guangzhou? How they are going to cope with these kinds of changes to maintain their market share? So how can they take some more counter, policy to create a bigger cake?
Yeah.
So that China have a big cake rather than the cake eaten by Hainan.
Right. Let me go to Charlotte. Charlotte, for someone who is now working in Hainan, in fact, in working on one of these dozen special projects, how do you see you and your colleagues are preparing for some of the inland challenges, as Mr. Yao put it? And how do you think this can be streamlined in the most efficient way?
Yeah, I really agree with Mr. Yao's challenge right now in Hainan, and also in general the fact that in general the business environment here is not as developed as it is in mainland China cities such as Shenzhen or Guangzhou. So I believe for my part, at least, I'm in charge of international investment here. So my job is to help foreign companies to set up entities here and to use all those new preferential policies that Hainan is offering. So I do believe that the big way in which we have been preparing over the last 4 years to prepare for this special custom operation is to actually understand those policies and understand how to apply it. And to do it is we have to do a lot of course, tests with our current companies that are currently located here, and see actually where are the blocking points in applying all those policies, because it's true on paper, it has a lot of opportunities, but then how to apply it in concrete life, this is of course the challenge. So in Yajabe High-Tech City, the main industry that we are mostly developing is agriculture technology, marine technology, but also life science with biotechnology. For all those industry, we are in very strong contact with custom operation, also with quarantine facilities, to understand better the import of global germplasm resources, but also to understand a better framework of IP protection as well for all those new foreign resources that enter Yajabe High-Tech City and Hainan Island in general, and how to make sure that all those assets are protected as well.
But when you look at what Hainan has been doing over the years, you see it is going in so many different directions. As you said, just agriculture, life science, medical, financial, e-commerce, and the list goes on. So we know it is a very diversified island, but still with so many directions for development. What might be the priorities? And particularly right now, when you do not have all the resources that everybody can dream of, we are not at the most prosperous time when it comes to how economies worldwide is operating. So Charlotte, your thoughts?
I do believe that was the main reason why those 13 key projects in Hainan were set up, because each key project will focus on specific industries and develop specific policies and specific way to facilitate those integration of these industries in the island. So as I was mentioning, in Yajabe High-Tech City, we focus on high-tech company, but we have other of those key projects in Hainan. Lingshui, for example, focus on international education to make sure we attract also international talents that will provide Hainan Free Trade Port industry with high-quality personnel. So for example, in Lingshui, they put in place specific policies that said that foreign universities are able to set up entities by themselves and don't have to do joint venture with local institutions anymore. So each of those zones like this, for example, the Lingshui area as well, focus on international medical tourism. So in that area, for example, foreign medicines and foreign medical equipment can enter, of course, at zero tariff, but also has a fast track way to apply for the NMPA registration within China and be able to sell their medical device and drugs within the Hainan Island, but also within China mainland. So all those key projects will set up those very convenient process and policies to make sure that all those different industries, as you say, that are so diverse, are properly integrated within the Hainan market.
What is this latest move by Hainan in China impact on your assessment of the latest trade situation and cooperation and competition with China?
The most significant and fundamental aspect is, of course, the recognition that tariffs and also non-tariff barriers, they are not good for trade and they are not good for economic development. And that is why when you have a relatively large island, the whole island being declared to be a free trade port, it enables not only, shall we say, tariff-free imports and exports, but also the setting up of, for example, as was mentioned, manufacturing plants, educational institutions, and so on. And all these very good and very productive opportunities for foreign investors, including those from Southeast Asia to consider. Of course, we also export a lot of raw materials to China, right? So as what I mentioned, if you have this 30% value addedness criterion for tariff-free shall we say, re-export to mainland China, then, for example, raw materials from Southeast Asia, you could, shall we say, manufacture it partially in Southeast Asia, let's say up to 50%, and then you you export the semi-finished goods to Hainan Island and finish the other 50% before sending it to mainland China. So all this would be, shall we say, mutually beneficial mutually beneficial means of production for both Hainan Island as well as many parts of Southeast Asia.
How do you think this is likely to renew another process of innovation policy-wise, and also another round of possibilities for cooperation in a very different landscape?
Well, indeed, we signed RCEP a number of years ago. Frankly speaking, I think at least in a lot of Southeast Asian countries, we are actually not making full use of RCEP. We are not exporting or importing tariff-free. And very often we impose very subtle non-tariff barriers in order to prevent goods from entering the respective jurisdictions. So if Hainan could do it well, the 13 projects, as was mentioned, with the different focus on both goods and services, well, then indeed they will say, well, why don't we also try such an experiment in one of our larger islands, right? So I think that, again, provides a very good testing point and role model for the rest of us.
Mr. Yao, China right now also has been thinking about, according to the 15th five-year plan outline, a big whole market, 统一大市场, as they say in Chinese. So how much will this latest move help to nurture the growth of that market? And also, what would that mean for the coastal provinces as a whole?
The free trade port in Hainan Island, it may create a lot of institutions that we didn't see before. And this institution could be duplicated or could be adapted to the domestic markets. So that when you form the uniform and large domestic market, actually a lot of difficulty is how to unlock the blockage here and there, not only between region, between industry, between production factors, between services, and more importantly is the institutional blockage. Now, Hainan Island is the so-called highly stressed testimony for this kinds of reform. Everything got to be free, everything got to be highly efficient at the international level. Otherwise, you cannot win. And this kinds of high efficient institutional implementation, it would gain a lot of experience. And this kinds of experience could be spilled over and adapted to the rest of the country.
Right.
So there's no confusion. There's no confusion between Hainan Island and also the big market we aim to create in China. Actually, it is self-enhancing, mutually beneficial in a sense.
Hainan has been a place that always believes to have tremendous potential. How will the latest development help the province to be more grounded, not just, the potential that people are talking about, but rather the real achievements this can make?
Now, Hainan Island actually have more potential because it have a bigger area. It is an island, and the tropical region, the agriculture and the natural, resources are much more abundant. But the difference is that Highland probably lack the kinds of experience that we have in Hong Kong. And we lack the experience of all the talents throughout the country flowing into Shenzhen. Now, today, we exactly facing this same problem. But luckily, I think the whole mainland China, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, all the experience are already ready for Hainan. So everything could be duplicated for Hainan Island. So there's no excuse that Hainan have no experience at all. And the second thing is that Hainan is now getting more open because the tax policy. People, not only the enterprises, but also individual, they pay a much less lower rate of tax. these kinds will give a very short-term advantage to attract not only investment but also attract talents.
Yeah.
And I hope these two elements will prepare a very rapid development in Hong Kong, in Highland.
What do you think are the conditions with which people like you can prosper and thrive, and also more like you will be happy to join?
I do believe that the environment in Sanya and in Hainan is quite incredible. Like for me personally, the main reason I am here is, of course, because of the balance you can have between, on one hand, this very high quality on life in a very healthy environment with a little bit of a lower pace of life than in major cities. But in the same time, living in an area that is undergoing a major development and fast development with more and more opportunities and more development. So I do believe that this balance between those two are a huge plus for attracting international talent in Hainan. The second, of course, is the fact that the government itself put in place a lot of incentives to attract those talent to work here. For example, in Sanya Yacha Bayside City, we put in place specific talent policies. So talents are divided in 6 categories from A to F and can receive between 400,000 and 4 million RMB as a cash reward just for working full-time in Yacha Bayside City. So, of course, these kinds of huge incentives can attract also a new bunch of talents to the island that will contribute to the development of the local business environment.
Last, before we go, ASAM, China just surpassed a big threshold. Its export surplus has reached more than $1 trillion US. Of course, some people make a big story out of this, but many see it as an evolution of trade. Having said that, though, we are seeing China is ever more being aware of the fact that all the business deals, the exports and imports, needs to be mutually beneficial between China and its business partners. So how do you see at this critical juncture this project, and how much can be created, the awareness and the know-how as a result of how to be a partner with one another based on mutual benefits?
China is now importing not only goods but also services,
Yes.
including some of the more high-tech services. And I think with this, essentially, again, a special zone free of tariffs and non-tariff barriers, and I want to especially emphasize non-tariff barriers, that it's very important, of course, for attracting more imports into China. Of course, frankly speaking, we hope that we are not just exporting the raw materials to China, right? It should be partially processed and manufactured in our parts of the world. And then, for example, we finally assembled on Hainan Island before being distributed to the rest of China. Once again, as I listened to the discussion just now, I think this is a very good role model both for the rest of China. I think various provinces, they will also like to try out such an experiment, but it's also for the rest of Southeast Asia as well, that we can take a leaf of lesson from this Hainan Free Trade Port lesson.
15th five-year plan focus on economic growth, but it also focus on international trade and investment. Now, continue to be open, continue to attract foreign investment and foreign goods, and continue to export Chinese goods to the rest of the world will increase the domestic economy resilience and also the capability to move the Chinese economy one step forward as designed by the 15th five-year plan. Now, the Hainan Island reform is just coming into this particular juncture. I think it will have a very strong stimulus for China to continue to be more open, at least to show to the rest of the world. China is not only opening the door wider, but also is ready to open even for a longer time in a much more radical way. Radical way means that lots of goods could flow into the island and through the gateway of island to the rest of the continent of the whole economy. So this is a very good time to build the confidence of the domestic and the international economy circulation, the so-called dual circulation, to move the Chinese economy to a much higher level, preparing for China to enter the more developed, country status.
Yao Shujie, Charlotte Magnet, and A Sun O. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.